I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, December the 27th, brought to you in part by Witex Corporation. Witex provides excellence in animal health, including but not limited to All-American identification tags of any kind for all classes of livestock. For more information, go to y-tex.com. Poor Grandpa. And I'm talking about Grandpa having to fight that cold weather that we had here right before Christmas and how miserable it was. And I realize a lot of you Feeder Flash gang members are still working with your grandpas, but I'm more referring to those of us that worked with our grandpas, and the grandpas have been gone for 30 or 40 years. And I worked with my grandpas when I was young, and they've both been gone at least that long, 30 or 40 years. But you know, poor Grandpa, it was just as cold and miserable whenever they were working, back when they were in their prime. And they didn't enjoy the modern equipment that we have today. You go back several years, you know, they didn't even have heated water tanks. How would you guys get by without heated water tanks? I know not all of you have them, and you don't have them maybe out in your pastures, but around your corrals, most of you do, and that sure makes life miserable when you're chopping thick ice and they barely get a chance to get a drink before it freezes back over again. They didn't have the vehicles and things that could go like we do today. You know, didn't have cabs on their tractors and things like that. And it was just tough on old Grandpa. They didn't have even as good of equipment for themselves. I know my grandfather on my mother's side, old Wallace Bebb, he worked on a ranch where they homesteaded, where they land rushed back in the day between Clayton and Narrabisa, New Mexico, out near the Thomas community. And you know, he didn't have much of nothing to fight the cold off. Just wad up newspaper and put in the top of his hat, and then tie a scarf around his hat and around the brim and down under his chin, and wear his wife's hose under his jeans. Wouldn't wear coveralls, because he said that was a good way to get in a wreck if he was on horseback, which I totally agree on that, but they're awfully nice whenever it's cold outside. But perhaps the worst thing that Grandpa didn't have back in the day to fight off these miserably cold temperatures is social media, where he could get sympathy and brag about how cold it was. And if you guys didn't notice that over the few days before Christmas, I mean, my goodness. And I seen several other people post on there, you know, what kind of pussies are we turning into, you know, when we can't even stand a cold snap. But, you know, they didn't have thermometers on the dashboard of their pickup where they could snap a picture of it and tell everybody how cold it was. But I realize it's cold out there, but it's going to be hot in July. I can almost guarantee it's going to be really hot in July, and you guys will be taking pictures of your dashboards again. It's 109 out here. It's, you know, I can get away from the cold a lot easier than I can get away from the hot. You can only take so many clothes off, but I know you guys had a good time with that, and I enjoyed going through it too, and especially seeing the snow levels that people were getting. But you know, it was starting to get a little bit ridiculous about everybody complaining about the cold. It's, you know, it's not any colder than it gets almost every year. Might have been a little bit early this year. Because I normally don't see those real frigid temperatures till January and February, and we'll probably see them again, and it'll probably worse, and we can get those cell phones back out and hit social media again with them. But just thought I'd have a little bit of fun with you guys on our first feeder flashback after Christmas. Got this one and then one more before New Year's, and then we'll get back to regular business after New Year's. But did have a cattle on feed report that we haven't talked about. It come out on Friday afternoon, and I have to admit it was kind of bullish, or excuse me, it was kind of bearish. It was not positive for feeder cattle market. I don't know that people are going to pay that much attention to it really. I mean, we really know, how tight we are on market-ready supplies of fat cattle, and we know that we've worked through so many of our light cattle back in the summer when we got really dry, and we know how short we are on cows and everything. But still, your placements come in, a couple of points for sure higher than what they were expecting them to be. It wasn't enough to really change our inventory numbers. So, I'm not sure how much it matters, but your inventory numbers for December the 1st came in at 97.4. The average of the analyst guess was 97.1. So 0.3 of a percentage point is not a big deal. But if you just look at the placements, which is the one that usually sways so much and has so much to say about how people deem the report, your placements came in at 97.9% of a year ago. The average of the analyst guess was 95.7. Ouch. I mean, we're dealing with a lot smaller numbers on that placement figure than we are on the inventory, but so be it. That's the way it was. Your range and guesses for the average of the analyst guess was 91.8 to 98.0, and we come in at 97.9. That's right there at the very, very top of the average of those analyst guess. But I would really be surprised if it hurts our board on Tuesday whenever we get board going back, because Monday's your actual holiday for Christmas, since Christmas landed on a Sunday. But I would really doubt that it does. Your marketings came in a little bit on the bullish side, 101.1% of a year ago compared to 100.9. So I'm not sure if they'll allow that to kind of cancel that placement out. Probably not, but we can't call it bullish, even though it was, our numbers on inventory and placements were lighter than a year ago. They weren't as friendly as what your analysts had predicted. You start looking down into the report and you see on your inventories, your big feedlot areas, inventories are up in Iowa and Nebraska, and inventories on December the 1st were down in Colorado, Kansas, and Texas. Well, as high as this feed is, and your proximity to some corn without having to put undue freight on it, that tells the story right there. So, the inventories went up in the northern plains closer to your corn, and they went down on your inventories down in the southern plains, where it took a lot of freight to get them there on already high prices. Also, I noticed in there your Texas placements weighing under 800 pounds were lighter, significantly lighter. Now, over 800 pounds, not really too much lighter to speak about, but your lighter weights. And I think that's just because all those cattle that were going to be light, they had already moved and went on to feed earlier, because we saw a lot of really light cattle going on to feed earlier back when they were going through the terrible drought. And I think those cattle had already been in there on your placement, so they wouldn't figure in as placements during November at a lighter weight. And I think a lot of those cattle are still weighing under 800 pounds, but they just didn't show up on the report because they were already in there. But let's look at your board for last week. December live cattle futures, Monday was up 22, Tuesday was down 22, Wednesday was up $1.07, Thursday down 22 again, and Friday up $1. And that was before your cattle and feed report came out. But December live cattle futures ended the week at 156.90. That was up 185 for the week. February ended the week at 157.75, up 198 for the week. January feeder cattle contracts, Monday was down 167, and then they were all higher, but had a hard time making up for that down 167 on Monday. But Tuesday was up $1.52, Wednesday was up 20, Thursday was up 15, Friday up just 2 cents. But your January feeder cattle futures ended the week at 184 even. That was up 23 cents for the week. March ended at 186.75, up 205 for the week, so pretty significant there. Your grains, March Chicago Board of Trade corn futures ended the week at 6.66 1/4 cents a bushel. That was up 13 1/4 cents a bushel. Pretty good gains there for your corn. Of course, everybody has gotten their corn bought. If anybody is still thinking about buying corn here for this feeding period before we get some new corn, they're pretty well behind the 8 ball. I can't see it going down a whole lot, but it is going to juke and jive and be pretty volatile. But January beans ended the week at 14.79, down 1 penny. Talk about your fat cattle market through Thursday of last week. 18,000 head of fat cattle sold through your 5-area feeding region during the holiday, right before Christmas there. They didn't act like they wanted anything until maybe late Wednesday afternoon. Then they traded some on Thursday, traded a little bit more on Friday, but they were trying to make everybody think that they didn't need anything to fill their needs. But like I said, they need cattle. That's what they need, is cattle. They've got the lion's share of them spoke for, but not all of them. They got to have some. But you look at your live sales of steers and heifers last week through your 5-area feedlots, 155 to 157 live basis. That was steady to $1 lower in a light test, but your weighted average was higher because all those cattle sold further up into the weighted average there, and we did have better movement in the northern plains than we did in the southern plains. But your weighted average on live steers through Thursday of last week was 155.90. That was 34 cents better than your weighted average on the previous week's movement. Dress sales last week, steers and heifers ranged from 246 to 249. We hadn't seen the 249. That's new, and that price spread would be $1 to $2 higher. And in fact, your dress steers for last week up through Thursday was 248.73. That was nearly $1 higher, 92 cents higher. So gained ground on your weighted average on both live and dress cattle there. Friday we saw a little bit more trade, 1,800 in Iowa. That was 8,500 head for the week, which is light, but like I said, it's it's a holiday week. But live sales in Iowa on Friday, 157 to 157.5. Dress sales at 245, which was off the market. Nebraska, just about 250 head confirmed on Friday. For the week, 7,700 head, so light for them too. Friday's confirmed sales at 155, which would be a very low end of the price spread, and dress 249, which is the extreme top. Kansas sold 1,800 head on Friday, just 3,800 head for the week in the whole state of Kansas that we saw. Likely there would be a few more because we saw your market a full $1 higher in the southern plains, mostly at 156. So we were 155 the previous week. Kansas's live sales on Friday were 155 to mostly 156. Texas had better movement than Kansas, 5,100 head on Friday, 6,400 head for the week. Live sales in Texas, 155 on just a few, and mostly all 156. That's a full $1 higher in the southern plains, creeping up on that spread between the northern plains and the southern plains. So that's pretty narrow right now, just $1 or $2 is all. Now box beef cutout values, your weighted average on all of last week's cuts, or all of last week's sales on choice cuts, 266.18. That was up $10.35 compared to the weighted average from the previous week. And your late Friday afternoon sales were $6 higher than that, almost 272. So that gained quite a bit. And normally we get up there around right at Christmas. It's not, but maybe people were buying some early purchases for the new year or what have you. But select weighted average on all of last week's sales, 239.21, up 10.85 compared to the weighted average from the previous week. And late week sales on selects were another 6 1/4 cents higher than that at about 245.5. So pretty good deal on the box beef last week, even though it was a major holiday week. But Choice Select spread on your weighted average was just under $27, and 463 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings is fairly light, but everything that we get to see spot market trade on your box beef cutout is light. It's even more shallow than what we get to see on our fat cattle trade, but it's all we got really, so we just have to go with it. Your slaughter for last week, 562,000. Of course, that's 63,000 less than the previous week because of the holiday, but 77,000 more than the same week a year ago. And you think, hey, we're doing a whole lot more this holiday season than last holiday season. No, because we're going to be very, very light on Monday, if anything, because that one, like I said earlier, that's your real Christmas holiday with Christmas falling on Sunday. So we're going to be pretty light on kill here going through this holiday season because of the way things fell. But talk about what else is going on. Beaver County stockyards be closed again this Tuesday here, but be getting back to business on next Tuesday, January the 3rd. But then the following Tuesday is the big special, your Feeder Flash Beaver Clash, January the 10th. Guys are starting to stack up on that day. He's going to have a free meal there. I'm going to be there. There's going to be some other DV auction guys there. We're going to be pulling out all the stops to have a big feeder cattle special on January the 10th for the Feeder Flash Beaver Clash. Let's talk about your feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index late in the week, and you have to be conscious of, we ran completely out of feeder cattle auctions. So we were winding way down, very light on receipts on your index levels based on an 800 pound steer up through your middle 12 states. But the latest available we had, and it's always up to date and current on your real-time index, was 173.86. And like I said, on really light receipts, your CME cash feeder cattle index for last Thursday was 176.75. Of course, you know, if they went ahead and kept reporting that, it would wind down too. But we get selling some cattle again here mid to late week this week, and then of course after the new year, we'll get that thing back where it needs to be. I want to tell you about Night Latch Group. That's Andy Cunningham, and you know about the LRPs, you know about crop insurance. He wants to tell you about a livestock policy called Livestock Gross Margin, telling me that for about $4 a hundred, you can get at the money corn and cattle coverage at the same time in one easy policy. For about $1 a hundred, you can get coverage not far out of the money. So let him talk to you about livestock gross margin for you cattle feeders. And I realize that LRPs don't work very good when you're feeding cattle, but this livestock gross margin policy does. Talk about your trends last week. Well, there just wasn't enough cattle selling to really find out what a trend is. We saw some impressive quotes last week, even though it was a holiday week right before Christmas. Saw some things sell that were just as impressive as anywhere else. But by sure Tuesday and Wednesday, we started winding down. Your buyers were not very aggressive because they hated to get those cattle there the next day or the day after, and then have to have people there to process them and all that. So it's just a time to really, it's hard to get a good feel for the market, and we won't get a good feel here for another week or so because we just got to finish out these holiday break here. But we'll tell you about our Zoetis stick out sale of the day. That was on Christmas Eve in Bassett, Nebraska. Bassett Livestock Auction had their bred heifer and bred cow sale there. They had to move it back a little bit because they had more snow than they really wanted to have a sale like that in, so they moved it back all the way up to Christmas Eve. Still had a good sale, still had good attendance, and had a good market there. Talk about their bred heifers weighing 1,000 to 1,250 pounds, and of course that's Sandhill, Nebraska cattle. They're going to be best quality you can find anywhere. But the bred heifers on offer sold mostly from $1,700 to $2,075 per head. The young bred cows weighing from $1,100 to $1,350 sold mostly $1,800 to $2,175. Did have 23 head of the Huffman bred cows there that bring 2450. Talk about some solid mouth cows, kind of middle-aged type cows on your bred cows, weighing 11 1/4 to 15 and a half. Sold mostly 1550 to 2050 per head, except for one package of those Huffman cows there, and they bring 2150 a head, solid mouth middle-aged cows. But I thought that was pretty impressive, and I didn't have a whole lot to give you for top feeder cattle quotes, but the best I got was last Thursday. It was Kimball Livestock Exchange. It's your Macrocin No BS top quote for the day. 76 steer calves weighed 650 pounds at $189.50. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.